This woman right here is one to keep your eye on. She's ready, she wants this, and I do think she is one to watch.
A clean start, explosive through the first steps. By the time she rises into full stride, the race is already slipping away from everyone around her. Then the clock appears, 6.94 seconds. The second fastest women's 60 meters ever run, only 200ths away from 6.92, a world record that has survived for more than 3 decades. For Julien Alfred, history was no longer somewhere in the distance. It was 200ths of a second away. But long before Alfred was chasing one of sprinting's most untouchable numbers, she was watching someone else make impossible numbers seem reachable. Usain Bolt was more than the fastest man in the world to her. He was proof that an athlete from a Caribbean island could walk onto the biggest stage in sport and become the standard everyone else was measured against. Alfred has said his influence helped shape her dream. Years later, she would begin creating the same kind of possibility for an island of her own. Because before the Olympic gold, before the world titles, and before 6.94 placed her beside the fastest women in history, there was Saint Lucia, an island of fewer than 180,000 people that had never produced a global sprint superstar. And there was a young girl whose journey into athletics began almost by accident. Born in June 2001 south of Castries, Alfred first attracted attention when a school librarian noticed something unusual. She kept beating the boys in races. The librarian pushed her toward track and field. A local coach began developing the raw speed, and suddenly a future in the sport was beginning to appear. Then, when Alfred was only 12 years old, everything stopped. Her father died in 2013. Alfred stepped away from athletics, overwhelmed by the loss, and for a time the talent that had seemed capable of taking her somewhere disappeared from the track completely. People around her eventually persuaded her to return, but when she came back, she did not choose the comfortable path. 2 years later, at only 14, she left Saint Lucia for Jamaica, leaving her family and everything familiar behind for one reason: to discover how fast she could actually become. Jamaica was not simply another place to train. It was where the possibility she had seen through Bolt became tangible. Alfred enrolled in a renowned high school and entered the legendary Jamaican school competition system. She was now developing inside the country that had turned sprinting into a national language. The decision paid off. In 2018, Alfred won silver in the 100 meters at the Youth Olympic Games in Buenos Aires, giving Saint Lucia its first medal there. The girl who left home at 14 could see the gap between inspiration and achievement shrinking. Her next transformation came in Texas. At university, Alfred became one of the fastest young sprinters. Even after the pandemic disrupted 2020, her progress continued. Then, in February 2023, she ran 6.97 seconds over 60 meters and became the first woman in American university history to go under 7 seconds. 2 weeks later, everything accelerated. At the National Indoor University Championships, Alfred ran 6.94 in the 60 meters and 22.01 in the 200 meters, winning both titles on the same day. The 6.94 changed the conversation. The world record was 6.92. Alfred was no longer simply following the greatness she had watched growing up. She was approaching a benchmark of her own, only 200ths from history. But extraordinary times do not automatically create championship medals. That became clear later in 2023 at the World Championships in Budapest. Alfred arrived as one of the sport's most exciting young sprinters, but finished 5th in the 100 meters and 4th in the 200 meters. Close, but after everything that had brought her there, she still left without a medal. Consider what that meant. She had lost her father at 12, left home at 14, rebuilt herself in Jamaica, and run times beside legends. Yet, on the senior stage where medals define the result, she finished just outside them. In sprinting, hundredths can separate history from silence. Budapest exposed the question following every university athlete into the professional ranks: can the speed survive against established champions? Alfred had the talent and expectations. What she did not yet have was proof on the biggest senior stage. She had spent years chasing the level Bolt had once made visible to her, but now inspiration could no longer carry the story. She had to win. Instead of slowing her, Budapest began the defining 12 months of her career. Early in 2024, Alfred won the 60 meters indoors, becoming the first athlete from Saint Lucia to win a world title. She could win globally, but biggest stage was still ahead. Then came Paris, one Olympic final, one straight line, a little over 10 seconds to decide whether years of sacrifice would become history. Alfred entered the women's 100 meters final, carrying the hopes of an island without an Olympic medal. Bolt had once shown her what it looked like when a Caribbean sprinter seized the center of the world. Now Alfred had her own lane, her own moment, and one race to make the dream real. Then she crossed the line first, 10.72 seconds, a national record, Olympic gold, Saint Lucia's first Olympic medal. Before Alfred, every Olympic appearance by Saint Lucia had ended without a medal. No podium, no flag raised for one of its athletes. After one race in Paris, that history was gone. She added silver in the 200 meters, and Saint Lucia declared a national day in her honor. The athlete who once watched Bolt make greatness feel possible had now created that image for children from her island. Paris answered every doubt Budapest had left behind. The child who needed convincing to return to athletics, the teenager who crossed the Caribbean for better competition, and the university star who had stood inches from the podium in Budapest had now reached the highest step in the sport. Alfred had gone from being inspired by a Caribbean legend to becoming one herself, and that is why Paris could not be the ending. Once she answered whether she could become Olympic champion, one question remained. What does an athlete chase after proving the dream was real? For Alfred, the answer was already sitting on the clock, 6.92. The 60 meters world record had survived for more than 30 years. Alfred's 6.94 remained only 2/100ths away. Before Paris, the record chase was about potential. After Paris, it became about legacy. Now every indoor start carried the possibility that she could take ownership of a number no woman had moved for generations. After an injury shortened her 2025 season following a bronze medal in the 100 meters at the World Championships in Tokyo, Alfred returned in 2026. On February 13, at a meet in Arkansas, she opened with the fastest 60 meters time that year. 2 days later, she ran 6.99 to win gold and broke a 14-year-old meeting record. The number was not 6.92. Years after first running 6.94, Alfred was still producing sub-7-second speed, still operating inside the margins where records are broken. A month later, at the World Indoor Championships in Torre, Poland, she won bronze and finished only 0.03 from silver. Championships were being decided by fractions too small to see. The Olympics had been about whether Alfred could arrive. Now the question was how far she could push once she had. The world record was no side story. It was the unresolved test keeping the career moving forward, the number still standing. By June, she had moved outdoors, winning the 200 meters at the Diamond League in Rome before taking the 100 meters in Oslo. Chasing 6.92 had not narrowed her. Alfred remained dangerous across the sprint program while carrying an unfinished indoor target. And now the Bolt connection comes full circle. Usain Bolt gave young Alfred an image of world-changing Caribbean speed. She followed that image to Jamaica, through Texas, past Budapest, and onto the top step of the Olympic podium in Paris. But inspiration only explains the beginning. What Alfred does next will determine whether the comparison becomes legacy. She has not broken the 60 meters world record. That makes the story more compelling. The record is still there, 6.92, a number that has survived entire generations. Alfred sits at 6.94, close enough that every start, transition, and fraction of acceleration can change the history of the event. Her coach has broken the race down frame by frame, searching for the smallest speed still available. The pursuit has become a technical hunt for hundredths, where the difference between remaining second fastest and becoming the fastest may exist inside a movement almost invisible to everyone watching. Los Angeles 2028 is waiting. Alfred will be 27, potentially defending her Olympic 100 meters title on American soil, with that indoor record unfinished. By then, the question will not be whether she belongs among sprinting's great names. Paris already answered that. The question is whether the cycle completes itself. Can the girl who once needed Usain Bolt to show her what was possible become the athlete another child watches for exactly the same reason? Can she take down 6.92, defend the Olympic title that changed Saint Lucia, and move from following an example to becoming the example? That is why this story is still moving. Bolt may have helped light the first spark, but the next chapter belongs to Julien Alfred. The stopwatch still says 6.92. Los Angeles is still ahead, and somewhere on another small island, another young sprinter may already be watching.